It's a tremendous schus and pachad to speak today on the 26th of Teves, the 12th Yartzheit of Goyin HaTzadik, Moreno Rabbeinu, Shlomo Lev Brevda Zatzal. Zoichet to have the Rav's son here. And if I would say that I wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for Rav Brevda, it would be a very great understatement. As I spoke 2 years ago, the last time we made a sifa in the memory, on the Yartzheit of Rav Brevda, there were many Rabbanim I was zochet to make miskasha to in my life, Gedolei Olam, and all of them helped me unbelievably, and I gained so much from them. But Rav Brevda was the one Adam Gadol who was willing to roll up his sleeves and say, I'm coming down with you into Gehenna. I'm here with you. You know, Rav Brevda would say that he remembers, he would talk about the difference between today and when he was a bacher, that he meets people who he was bacher in yeshiva, and you feel such a tremendous iskashrus, closeness, and yedidus. And today, that's not as prevalent, that iskashrus. But Rav Brevda was somebody who, when you connected with the Rav, he was totally there with you. B'nefesh u'b'leiv. V'milanu. Who is it like that in our generation today? I want to share with you today a very, very powerful idea. It's not necessarily something I heard from Rav Brevda, but as I heard once from Rav Chaim Shmulevitz, Rav Brevda used to say from Rav Chatzkel Levenstein, the godless, a Talmud is someone who takes the teachings of a Rebbe into the next generation. You know, the difference between, we could call Rav Brevda's generation and today is like, we heard this morning, we heard some from the rabbi in California, what's going on in the world today. It's a paradigm shift, it's a chasm, right? And to take Rav Brevda's Torah and to bring it into this generation is very, very big avoda. Especially since Rav Brevda didn't accept any nonsense. And Rav Chaim Shmulevitz said, the godless of a Talmud is not to say what the Rebbe said, but to say what he would say if he was around today. I want to share with you some ideas. And I'll start with a goin. About 27 years ago, I was listening to a shir from Rav Brevda, and he said, if you don't learn Mishlei with the Gra, then you have absolutely no chance, no hope to overcome the Yetzer Hara. It was 11:30 at night. I went to my next door neighbor, Gershon Unger. I knocked on the door, and he said, we got to start now. Rav Brevda said, we have to start now. And Baruch Hashem, we learned to say for twice together. I'm still giving shir on it. And he 100% correct that you can't really do anything against the Yetzer Hara unless you learn the Sefer. Mishlei with the Gra. So there's themes that go through the Sefer. And in Parak Beis, Pasuk Zayin, the Pasuk says, Yitzpan li'yisharim toshia, magen l'hol cheitam. So the Gra explains there's two personality types. That's what's called the Tam and what's called the Yashar. The Tam, not to be confused with Pesach, we have a Tam. The Tam is somebody exactly v'shteit, the halacha, you don't budge an inch, you don't do anything, you just go exactly v'shteit. You don't use your own seichel at all. You mavat yourself completely to what the Torah says. That's the Tam. The Yashar is a little bit more broad-minded. He doesn't deviate an iota from the halacha, but he's mechadish, he understands. There was another Adam Gadol I was very close to, Rav Olba, and I remember once, I was walking in the winter, I didn't have a coat on, and he said, why don't you have a coat? I said, it's not cold. He said, but in the winter you wear a coat. You know? I said, but it's not cold. He says, but in the winter you wear a coat. You know, I told him once I got pneumonia. One Zman I had meningitis and pneumonia. And I said, I think I'm pushing myself too hard. He said, first Seder, second Seder, night Seder, go to sleep. Like, well, anyway, that's That's more the derech of the Tam. The Yasher, he'll be machadish, he'll say things, he'll be out of the box, more expansive outlook on life. Yeah? And the Gra says it's dangerous. Because once he says here, right. Right. Second. He says, "Ach, efshar sheyachshil shlo miskaben, v'sarch lemogin login love shlo yikashel." Mogin, right? Okay. He needs a protection that he shouldn't stumble. I once asked the Rav Brevda. I said, "What's better, mahalach? Is it better to be a tam or is it better to be yasher?" And I remember I was walking down Rehov Zevin in the Vayakov. He stopped for a second and said, "You need both of them. Sometimes you need to be a tam. Sometimes you have to and sometimes you have to be yasher." Yeah, and I know so many situations in my life which are so insane. You know, if I read a book about it, nobody would believe that it's true. Yeah, even when I did write a book, people didn't believe it's true. So certainly it was true. Certain people wouldn't believe it's true. Not that it wasn't true, but I didn't say everything. But Lamaisa, his godless was that he could look at a situation which was complete insanity and make head and tails out of it and tell me exactly what to do with things that doesn't say in the Torah. And that's the Yasher. The Yasher is someone who can size up a situation, yeah? And the Torah doesn't say what to do in that situation. And tell you exactly what to do using godless of Torah. And Lamaisa, what I realized is that this is a sugya. It's a sugya in Baba Basra. The Gemara Baba Basra says like this. It's in Baba Basra, Daf Yud Beis Amud Aleph. It says, brings a pasuk in Tillim. V'navi b'leiv of Chachma, Perek Tzadi, right? Chacham adav minavi. A Chacham is greater than a Navi. And when you think about it, it's like a Pel de Kazach. A Navi is somebody who can say over the Devar Hashem. Look at the Mesil Yisharim. He goes through all the Madregas, Zeros, until you get to Rav Kosh and Nevuah. Like then, you're there. Like once you got to Nevuah, you're there. No, say Chazal, there's a higher level than a Navi. There's someone even a higher level than a Navi. And that's the Chacham. So what is it? How could it be? How could it be that there's a higher level than a Navi? Yeah? So Lamaisa, I looked a little bit around here, and I found some astounding things here. I want to share it to you today because it so much sums up Rav Brevda. Yeah? The Rimi Gash, the Shita Begatzos brings an incredible thing from the Rimi Gash. The Rimi Gash says like this. By Har Sinai, Hashem spoke to Moshe Rabbeinu, and Chazal tell us that every single chiddush that was ever said and will ever be said was said to Moshe Rabbeinu Har Sinai. You know, there's a famous story with the Rogachover. He once wrote a skama for somebody, and he said, "This is emes chedushim." It wasn't even said on Har Sinai. Yeah. Another time, he signed his signature at the bottom of the page, the skama. He said, like, why? He said, "Dvar sheker tirchak." Yeah. So he was very charif about his skamas. But every single thing in the Torah, Rav Chatzkel Levenstein said, our hasag of Torah is a drop in the bucket. Yeah? Whatever we understand, drop in the bucket. The Torah is infinitely deep. Right? And there was things said to Moshe Rabbeinu which we have no hasag of. So says the Rimi Gash, if a Navi would get up and say something that Hashem didn't say, it's Chayv Misa. Yeah? But if the Chacham gets up and says something, he says, Diyu Navi lo amar elamash shama uma diyar b'pumya ilu chacham kamar ma di itmar lemosha misinai afagav lo shama. He wasn't there. I mean, our neshamas were there at Har Sinai. He wasn't there in Har Sinai, but lemaisa through his chachma, he's able to perceive things that even a navi can't say. And so many times I was so nishtomim from speaking to Rav Brevda, how can you have the sensitivity, the wisdom, the depth, the understanding? It was, I didn't have any words. I'll tell you a story that's in the book about Rav Brevda. which it doesn't have my name on it. They didn't put my name on it. But when Rav Brevda was very sick, we every Thursday Rav Dan Segel used to come speak in our Beis Medrash, and I told Rav Dan, Rav Elyashiv was also sick. We'll make it tefillah. Let's make it tefillah for Elyashiv and Rav Brevda. So we did it. We davened. Anyway, that night I called Rav Brevda, and Rav Brevda says, "I want to thank you for making that tefillah today. And you don't have to tell anybody about this." You don't have to tell anyone about this, yeah? He could perceive things. Like, where did that come from? How did I know? They say in the book also that he had 2 Talmidim, one of them was finishing Tilma every night, and he understood everything. He understood, this is the real godless of a Rebbe, yeah? Today, it's been already, I was Talmud 18 years, 12 years, so it's 30 years since I first read Rav Brevda, right? Today, like, things are falling into place that he said 20, 30 years ago, and today it's falling into place. And he knew exactly at the time to say something, in 20 years I would chop it. Yeah? That's really an Rebbe, and there's no way you could do that. It's Chochem Adav Minavi. There's no way a person could do that unless they have a bechina of Ruach HaKodesh. I remember I was at the wedding of his first grandchild, and I just put out my sefer, Yerabina. I was very happy about it. And I brought it to the wedding. I gave him a copy. I gave the Rav a copy of it. So he gave it back to me. He said, "This is not the place to give out a sefer that you publish." This is my son's. And he told me something really very, very powerful. But he always did it in a way that you didn't feel bad. I called him once, Erev Rosh Hashanah. This must have been about 26, 27 years ago. And I just read in Rav Chatzkel Levenstein writes, he says, even a 1-day-old baby is judged on Rosh Hashanah. And I called Rav Brevda up and I said, what did he do? He made in his pants? He woke up his father? How can you judge a 1-day-old baby? He goes to me, "You stupid American!" He said, 1 day before Rosh Hashanah, this is what you're asking me. He's asking about your Shalom Bayis. Right? And I wasn't upset at all. I said, you know what? You're right. I should be thinking about, Erev Rosh Hashanah. He knew, and at the same time, sometimes I call him with just incredible problems. And he knew exactly how to be soft as butter. He knew exactly how to be as sharp as a knife. Yeah, and exactly the right time. And that's not a koyach, anoshi. Such sensitivity and such wisdom. That's chochem adav minavi. I saw here the Shev Shmaitz, he says something unbelievable. And this is mamash a chizik to us. We're learning here Horoah Halach Lamaisa. He says like this. He says kasher. This is in the Hakdama. Kanish bonim b'maisa boiri kol nevroyim strichen tikkun v'asiyah. And that's why we need bris milah. They ask if Hashem created a male, why did he create bris milah chasar? So everything needs a tikkun. Kisa medrash. Kol shebar b'shes mei ha'maisa tzarich tikkun. Right? He gives example. Wheat needs to be ground. Mustard needs to be sweetened. He says, "Umipanei ki atar nisnu me'Hashem yisbarach al yedei navi, u'mailas ha'seichel gadol nevias, chacham adav minavi, kamo she'apulas ha'seichel gadol me'ateva, kamo k'nei gedola minevua, u'lekach ha'chamim im ikar atar v'ashlomasai." Yeah? So what the Sheish Shmaitz is saying Betzim is like this. Yeah? Hashem gave us a Torah, right? It was a tough kuf dal doros before Brias Ha'olam was the Torah. The Torah, they used to go to Rav Cutler. They would try to get him to say the word Torah. He would say Torah. The Torah is shleimus, perfection. But even with the shleimus of Torah, right, and it's Das Hashem, the Chacham can still be most of something onto the Torah and add to it a nekuda of shleimus, and that's Chacham Adav Binavi. That's Chacham Adav Binavi, and Lamaisa, to see that over and over and over again, yeah, to be Zoiche, to be a Talmud of such a Adam Gadol, and you don't appreciate what the Torah really is unless you see it. It says, the Gemara says in the Nida, that Kamano Chacham she libo geshmaitza. Yeah, that you can learn about Midos, you could learn about Chachma, you could learn, we say, you could learn about a Nava for 1,000 years. Yeah? But if you go speak to Rav Asher Eli for 5 minutes, you'll understand what a Nava is. You can't understand without that. Until you've seen the Torah be mislabish on a God who's worked on himself, yeah, that you don't really understand what Torah really is. I want to add another nakuda over here, which is really very, very chashuv. And I'm reading the biography, the English one, the Hebrew one. Interesting how they made some changes there. But you look at Rav Brevda, he grew up. I don't want to say he was an American boy, but he was, right? He grew up an American boy. I told Rav Brevda once, I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, I'll say it anyway. I told him once, I grew up with music, with secular music. I say, it's hard for me. Sometimes you hear on a bus or something, and he says, you know what? I have the same problem. It was different to Kufa. But he grew up in America with all the drives of America, all the music, all the gashmias, yeah. And he was able to be mis'aleh from everything and to recognize what Torah really is all about. He had a famous line, I say it often. He said, there's a lot of fish in America. There's tuna fish, there's salmon fish, but the most popular one is shellfish. Yeah? And okay, I heard that many, many times. But one day, it just dawned on me. And Baruch Hashem, from America, people in America are great. Anyone listening, shouldn't think I'm insulting them. But there's a certain push in America to be mimala your own ritzonos. What I want, that's the most important thing. There's a mitzvah of chesed, there's a mitzvah of Torah, there's a mitzvah of tefillah, all those things. But in the end of the day, the kava machriya, the most important thing is what I want. And Rav Brevda taught me, that's not true. Yeah, that's not true. Rav Chaim Volozhin writes it. He says, a person is put in this world, lezulas, for other people. Yeah? And Rav Brevda lived his life, every single second was living for the Borei Olam and for other people. Rav Moshe Sternbach told me once, he said, people think the godless of the Brisker Rov was his Torah. And he was great in Torah. Don't get me wrong. Right? Rav Chaim Brisker was once singing and dancing, and his wife said, well, what happened? My son is bigger than me in Torah. Yeah? But, said Rav Moshe Sternbach, but the true godless of the Brisker Rov was, he didn't move his finger like this without checking in with the Borei Olam, if that's what Hashem wants. Now it's Yedua that Rav Shlomo Brevda was the first hand-picked Talmud of the Brisker Rov to open up his yeshiva, right? And he's Talmud, and Brevda, everything was thought out a sof. What's the ratzon of the Borei Olam? What's the ratzon of the Borei Olam? How could I give him the most nachas, and how could I stay connected to him under all circumstances? I was at a shir once. It was in Brooklyn, and he had this little chabura he used to give in Borough Park, and there was a guy sitting there right in front of his face, blowing bubbles. I felt this is such an audacity. I was looking at him, I was holding myself back. Afterwards, Rav Brevda came up to me and says, he works very hard all day. It's hard for him. That's what he needs. Don't say anything. Right? Don't say anything. Yeah? Rav Brevda understood the deep, deep nakudas of the human personality. I'll tell you another story. So my wife and I, we had tremendous yisurim in the beginning of our marriage. And finally, I went to Rav Brevda many times, speak to him. I finally said, that's it, I'm finished. I can't take it anymore. So he comes to me, come back tomorrow and have the answer to all your problems. Come back tomorrow and have the answer to all your problems. I'm answer? Well, that was a new one. I hadn't heard that one before. So I came back the next day, and he said, the answer to your problems is tefillah. I'm going to write you a tefillah, and everything's going to get better. And he sat with me for 45 minutes, and every word, he was pulling it down. Every word was pulling it down from Shemayim. And Baruch Hashem, it got a lot better. Anyway, so I published, I said, can I publish this tefillah? He said, well, it's patented. It's patented. Anyway, that meant you're allowed to publish it. So, but something I have to aspire this from is he could have just told me right away, okay, I'll write you a tefillah. He didn't. He said, come back tomorrow and the answer to your problems. He knew, right? He knew that part of my shorosh avoda was tefillah, Yeah? Does someone have a copy of Praying with Joy? It's over there. Can you hand it to me? Yeah? Part of my shirt. It had to work on tefillah. And in order to ma'arich it properly, it needed to sink in. He knew 24 hours waiting, at the end of 24 hours, I'm like, wow, And he's going to write me this tefillah, it's going to work, and that. So he writes here. Now, the first time I asked him for a skamu was 18 years, the first time I met him. And he didn't say no, and I kept asking again, he didn't say no. I asked him about 700 times, and finally, after 18 years, he wrote me one. So he writes like this: "It is indeed a source of true satisfaction to me when reading that Rabbi Daniel Y. Travis came close to devout prayers through my advice in a time of sorrows. Since then, Rabbi Travis has embarked on an ambitious project, indeed, strengthening his own actions of prayers and spreading the words to thousands of readers of his extremely well-written publications on prayer to Hashem." So he knew that I had the potential to connect to tefillah, but how do you do that exactly? He knew if I had to wait for 24 hours and think about it, that it would go in. And everything was like that. Every single thing he did was with calculations of tremendous chachma. Yeah? How to make the biggest impact on people. He would speak every year upstairs in Mishkan Esther. We'd get 150, 200 people. And he would have people on the floor. It was so funny. We were cracking. We were just trying to breathe. We were laughing so much. And then once we were, our defenses down, we were laughing, he would stick in the most powerful Musar board. It was it went right in, because our defenses were down. He knew the intricacies of the human personality and how people work and exactly, what makes them up. And there's no way to get that. The only way to get that is Chachma Satara and Chachma Adaf Minavi. And that's really, Lo Kol Echad Zoiche Lezeh. Lo Kol Echad Zoiche. But on the other hand, look, here's Rav Brevda. He grew up in America, right? He had a lot of potential in a lot of areas. He had a lot of things he could have pursued. He was once, Rav Hutner came to their cheder, and he was testing things, and there was a boy there who was getting all the questions because his father was the biggest donor. So Rav Brevda said to himself, he said, if he asks me a question, I'm devoting my entire life to Torah, right? And I can answer it. Anyway, he asked a very hard question, and Rav Brevda answered it, and he got I said, okay, that's it. My entire life, I'm giving over to Torah, right? He, before the Rav was nifter, so he told me, there's really no reason to ever eat any cookies, candy, sweets, anything, right? Really, you should just eat he used to measure the amount of water he would drink. He would walk around with a thermos, I've already had 320 cc, I can't have any more, Everything he did was completely, you said, so you have to give up all cookies, everything, I said, Rebbe, that's hard for me, So I said, you know what, Bli Neder, I'll do it, except for Yontif, not even Shabbos, I don't need anymore. So, but he had such control over every single thing he did, and every single word that came out of his mouth, and every single machshava. It was completely connected to the Borei Olam, and that's Eved Hashem. He was mamish and Eved Hashem, and with all that, when you spoke to him, nobody else in the world existed. He was once speaking to somebody. His name is Zev Moser. He's a Choyin. He's a Chashva Talmud of the Rav, and he asked him a question, and he looked at him. I think it's in Parak Tes Zayin. Yeah, here it is. In Tes Zayin Dal, the Gra says, here. In Tes Zayin Dal. So the pasuk is, Kol po Hashem l'maneu, v'gam Rosh Amra. So the Gra says that when there were Nevi'im, you would go to the Navi, and he would look at your Shorosh Neshama and point you in the exact direction you had to go. We don't have that today, so he says we have Ruach HaKodesh, and then we have mitzvahs. But he was talking to this Rabbi Moser, and he was looking at him, and you could see he could see his Shorosh Neshama, and he told him exactly what he was supposed to be doing. Right? He could connect him on the darga of the Nevi'im, and that's what we're saying here. Chacham Adav Minavi, the Chacham and the what's it called? The Rush points this out in the Tshuva. It's in the Tshuva's Harush. The Torah brings it to Halach L'Maisa. The Rush writes like this. It's in Klal Sameches Simen Chav Gimel. Right? Nistavein ledan din emes lamitu afal pisha einanu neviim ledan dvarim shebelev chacham adav minavi. So the Prisha explains the Rush. He says, "Shielchu achar ratzlom Hashem yisbarach maser lechachamim matera." They're given the Torah. Shielchu achrei chachmaschem lahavin davar mitok davar uleilich baser umdana ulava leemes mashe eina navi yoch lasas kain lishano shum davar benavasa. When Rav Brevda used to say about certain Rabbanim, he said they can know a lot of Torah, but it doesn't fuse with their personality. The ultimate godless of a Talmid Chacham and Anam Gadol is the Torah becomes part of them, yeah, to the point where it's the same thing. Right? There's no difference between the Torah and them. Right? They used to say Rav Shach, you cut open his veins and Torah will come out. Yeah? And it comes to the point where everything they're doing, everything is coming from the Torah, and therefore whatever they say, it's like Shechinah and the Beres Mitoy Krono. Come on. And that was the godless of our Brevda. Finish up because the Rav's son is here and it's already late. But Lamaisa, I heard this many times from the Rav, and it's Yadua. He was a Bal Yisurim Neira Moed. Yeah, he used to tell me, I have about 5% of my kochos. And with 5% of his kochos, he would start the day in Akko, yeah, and he would finish the day in Beersheba. And each year he would give would be about 3 hours, yeah, and he was able to draw from a place which I don't know where he was able to get strength through the Torah and to give over in a way which is unbelievable, yeah. And despite all these surim that he had, he didn't let it affect him kiyuzah. He just kept going and just kept teaching Torah. But I'll tell you, and I'll finish up with that point, right? The most incredible thing about Rav Brevda, Lefini Zaiti, and maybe you won't necessarily hear that from other people. Everybody had a different sort of relationship was the way he connected. Yeah, the way he connected to you when you were speaking, right? It was unbelievable, right? You could be going through the most difficult times in the world that you can't possibly imagine, and he was just completely with you. Yeah, especially today, since we're dealing with the age of communication and technology, you're speaking to somebody sometimes, and he's sending in text and email, and this, or thinking about something. But when you speak to Rav Brevda, he was just 100% completely with you, and not only that, but you felt like his neshama and your neshama were connected. There's a Chuvas Radvaz. It talks about why you're allowed to divide up a shul, to start a new shul, and he says because there's something called soda ibor. Soda ibor, and soda ibor is that different people's neshamas are from different chalakim in Gan Eden, and the people who have from the same chalik in Gan Eden, so they connect to each other. So each person has a different Rav necessarily they connect to, but that's the soda ibor. Soda ibor is that your neshama and the person and the other person's neshama mamish fuse to be one. When you would talk to Rav Brevda, you felt like you were talking to like yourself. He was so connected to you. It was such a kesher. It was such a skarvus. It was unbelievable. I remember when this boy was killed in Brooklyn, Leib Kletsky. I called him up. I had a shayla, and he couldn't talk. Right? He couldn't talk because he was so distraught that this young boy had been killed. And he gave me a 1-hour shir about what it is and how much pain his parents are feeling and everything they're going through and that. And it was such a limud in the way you're supposed to feel for another Jew. They're freed, Baruch Hashem, they feed some of the chatufot, some of the hostages. And there's a lot of talk about it. This is crazy, and this, and releasing terrorists, and all. There's a lot of. Everybody has something to say. But what I really feel that Rav Brevda might say during this time is think about how much pain the families were going through. If your child was there, And think about what an incredible nechama to get your child back after so many days of so much pain. To feel that understanding, to connect to that. Yeah? The Rav spoke this morning, he said that. You can't really be a Rav unless you feel like for your Talmud like that. And you can't really feel for a Talmud like that unless you feel like every single Jew like that. The Sefer of Rav Shimon Shkop, Shar Yosher, he writes, what's a gadol? He says, some people, they have themselves, their wife, their family, and for some people, he asks the question, how can Mekayim b'haftarecha kamocha? How is it possible? I love I give myself 3 meals a day, I take care of my sleep and this, everything. I love myself a lot, yeah? He says, because you have to expand the kamocha, yourself. He says, some people's self is just their self, their family, maybe their community, maybe their city, their country. And some people's self is the Gans Klal Yisrael. And that's a gadol. A gadol means that his self is a chavet to the entire Klal Yisrael. And the Gra says here, at the end of the Perek of Tes, he says, every gadol is given the neshama of Moshe Rabbeinu. Yeah? Every gadol is given the neshama of Moshe Rabbeinu. And that's how they're able to do this. That's how they're able to feel the pain of every single Jew. That's how they're able to feel the pain of every single Jew. So Rabosai, look, I'm an Adam Katan, but we all have the ability to become Adam Gadol. Rav Brevda should be a real dugma for all of us, especially those of us who grew up in America and other countries. Yeah, you don't have to say, okay, look, I wasn't born into the family of Chaim Kanevsky or Rav Yashiv or this. Yeah, every single person can make a decision like Rav Brevda made a decision by that shir with Rav Hutner. I'm going to give myself over to Torah. Number one. Every single Jew could say, I'm going to be an Adam Gadol. I'm not just going to care about myself. I'm going to care about all Klal Yisrael. Rav Shlomo Zafrani told me there was a levayer for 5 Sifrei Torah, I believe, when he was young, just got married. And Rav Tzadka said, who knows if this didn't happen because we're not enough kosher to Klal Yisrael, to people who are far away, and Karov. And he said, at that moment he decided, I'm going to be a Jew for the entire Klal Yisrael. Today is the Rav of 70 shuls and the whole world, really. Right? Each and every one of us can make that decision that we're going to be given over to Klal Yisrael. Just like Rav Brevda did, just like Rav Savani did, just like others did. And special Siyata D'Shmaya, today is the Yartzheit or Rav Brevda. We could all make that decision and be completely given over to the Jewish people. And the milas are incredible. Look, the Gra says that you get the neshama of Moshe Rabbeinu, yeah, and it says that Hashem is waiting to find that individual who the neshama of Moshe Rabbeinu can sit by. Al Kopanim, Tein L'Chacham B'Yachim Oid, right? Libi, Hamai, right? It feels such a loss that we don't have Rav Brevda with us. But the truth is, we still have him with us. We have his Torah, we have his teachings, and when you learn from a Rebbe, it becomes part of you, especially if the Rebbe is so metapa with your life. And here at Sunday, we should all be zoiche to follow in Rav Brevda's footsteps, and we're zoiche now to hear from Rav Elbel, Rav Brevda's son. We should all the Torah learned here, because Be'etzim, this base medrash was musid on the Torah and the tefillas and the hashkafa of Shlomo Brevda Tzal. We should be zoiche to be a true nachas ruach from him in Shemayim, a main came to its son.
Story about Rav Hutner, he never told us that part. Only told us that he was in 7th grade. So Rav Hutner was very impressed with him and he pinched him on the cheek. All these teachings that you told us, he never came out right and told, do this and do this and do this and do that. He never told us the decisions he made in his life, why he didn't marry the millionaire's daughters that was offered then was offered then to get married to this daughter. He gets $500,000. Billy Guzman, those days, talking 70 years ago. This one $250,000, one $750,000. Eretz Yisrael, there was an offer that he didn't want to tell us the amount, one of the biggest gevirim in Eretz Yisrael then. He just said, so I said, what did Reb Chatzkel say? Oh, you want to know what Reb Chatzkel said? I went to Reb Chatzkel, I gave him a list of all the gevirim in the world that wanted me, and I had variety in Eretz Yisrael, in America, and he says, let me look at the list. Reb Chatzkel is very sharp compared, my father is also sharp, but Reb Chatzkel is even sharper. And he says, a daughter from a Gevir you want to marry and you want to have Shalom Bayis? It doesn't work that way. What are you going to do for her? Buy another necklace? She has. Buy a few more diamonds? She has diamonds. What are you going to do for her? Take her on a trip? She went there. Take her skiing? She went there. Switzerland? She was there. What are you going to do for her? You want to have Shalom Bayis? She'll never be happy. So he said, so what should I do? Find a girl from the most poorest home in the world you can and get married to her. So he found my mother, who was one of 11 children, and they lived in Yerushalayim in a one-bedroom apartment. In a one-bedroom apartment they lived. And my grandfather's my mother's father was a Yid that learned Torah till his last day. He learned to Zechar Moshe in the morning, and afterwards he learned in Karem next to the Chamesha Shul. 75 years, he never stopped learning. As a matter of fact, I used to go there as a bacher, being his man, and come back from America, go to visit them. I said, can we take a picture with Zaidi when he's ready? When he's ready, bein hazmanim, ready, the whole family. I didn't chap till afterwards. He always sit by the table with the sefer. I took the picture, he went, okay, finished? I didn't chap till, because somebody pointed out to me years later. The Ger Rebbe from today, his father lived next door to my grandfather. So the Chassidim and Litvisher didn't always click like a puzzle exactly. But the tris was broken in my grandfather's dining room. And he said, this Litvak over there, he's a Litvak, what should we do? One thing you can learn from him, whenever we look into his room, day or night, he learns, and he learns, and he learns, and he learns, and he learns. He said, we can learn from him. Even though he's a Litvak, we're allowed to learn it from him. That's what he told me. And the Maisa, he didn't use electricity Shabbos in Yerushalayim, like many people don't do. And he had a problem Friday night. The candles, you can't learn by a candle. So he got hold of a car battery. You remember those days, cars still had batteries, remember those days? And he had somebody come in, and he took out the light of a flashlight, and they connected it to this battery. That will work a whole Shabbos. He put it high up so nobody would break it. He would climb on a ladder and take a big Gemara, those days the Gemaras are this big, and sit there till 4 o'clock in the morning learning with this little light, every single Shabbos. I actually have a picture of it. Not of him learning on Shabbos, but of the light over there. And the Maisa, this is the home that he chose to get married to. And by the Tnoim, they say it was in convention of Gedolim Etzes HaTorah. All the Gedolim and Etzes HaTorah came. You took this one's daughter? Wow. And the whole Vart at Tnoim there was in the dining room, which was about probably as big as this. And the famous picture from Chatzkel, who was his main rabbi, was by that Tnoim. You see a picture of Chatzkel sitting there, there's a little wine bottle in front of him. If you look close, it was taken by that Tnoim. Chatzkel didn't like people taking pictures of him. He didn't like to be photographed. By that Tnoim. And what did they serve by that Tnoim? So this is a picture of my mother, saying is unten stark till 120, holding a bowl, and there's 6 apples in it as a collar. No flowers, anything. We're not talking jewelry. The necklaces of Chatzkel spoke, she didn't get by the engagement. And I asked my mother once, what's significance of 6 apples? He said, it says in Rus, but what's her name is not Rus. What's 6 apples? So she said, my father loved me tremendously. The Ava my father had for me was more than other children. But he didn't have any money, nothing at all. So he went to all his friends, borrowed all the money in the world he knew he could pay back. And he found in Eretz Yisrael, in those times, to buy 6 apples. 1 here, 2 here, 1 there, 1 there, 1 there. And they spoke about it. Then in Yerushalayim, there's a color that the father splurged. And he bought 6 apples at one time. So they bought a photographer. Every chip and bought a photographer. They should remember there was once a color in Eretz Yisrael in Yerushalayim that had 6 apples by Tnoim. They took the 6 apples They sliced it paper thin. Everybody got a thin paper of that thing of a piece of apple made of eights and a drop of wine. That was everything my grandfather was able to afford. And Taki gave up everything over there. So this is about Rav Hutner. The other thing that Rav Shkoyle mentioned, that he was able to see things that was extremely scary. I know a Chassidish guy that was extremely close to him. Ad Yom Ha'achrein. One says to him, between me and you. So he said, I was always close to him. But when I had that story, I became closer. Well, what's the story? One of his rebbes, Mashpiyim, lived in Eretz Yisrael. And my father was speaking the 5 towns. This person lived in the 5 towns. And he came in the middle of a drasha. And he says, Oi! In Himmel became dark now. The neshama of so-and-so just went out. And he was doing in Shema, in the middle of his drasha. The guy walks in, and he ran outside to call people. Never happened. Anyway, none of the drasha, he got a few texts that did happen. Exactly what my father told him. So he said, I tried to hide things from your father during my life. It didn't go. I said, you don't have to tell me, I know it firsthand. So how do you know? I said, when I was 14, I chose to learn out of town. Because in town, my father told me every day, you're learning, you're not learning, So I figured, I left Menuchas and Nefesh, and they were living in England then. In England, they were traveled 300 miles. It was like going from here to Japan. So he came home twice a year, Pesach and Sukkot. That was it. You never saw your parents more than that, and didn't have anybody on top of you. So the first month I came home, and I was 14 and a half, and father looks at me and says, Epes nicht, sie nicht. I said, yeah, come hell. That's why he sent you so far away, you shouldn't learn? No, the first 2 months he learned. Then it was a week like this, and he tells me the whole Zman. Okay? Next Zman, I decided, I'm going to learn. I came and he says, gewaldig. But then it was a winter Zman again, the long Zman. Hashem sent me the Eitzah. I came home and it was in the middle of giving a shir. So he couldn't talk to me, he couldn't see me, because I knew he would criticize. I knew he would know. But next morning already, okay, the Shalom Aleichem was a little different. They didn't maybe chapped. Maybe actually chapped. But the Ma'aseh was very scary. People used to speak to him and he'd say, exactly like that. Mamish, it's almost, so what's the truth? How did it work? What happened? Like, now the tefillis is murdered that Rosh Chodesh spoke about the tefillis. I wasn't there to get a tefillah from him. I was there to get a lot of brachas from him. And the brachas actually worked, Baruch Hashem. The tefillis was something unbelievable, that he was able to write for people tefillis, and every person that got a tefillah from him and davened with kavanah told me it was answered right away, more or less right away. Within a few weeks, everybody had Yeshuas. But the uptouch of it, l'chayra is he dedicated his life to 2 things, only 2 things, Torah and tefillah. Money wasn't important to him. Vacations weren't important to him. Luxuries weren't. Nothing was important to him. Torah and tefillah was very important to him. Of course, in Torah is included chesed. The amount he did, maybe hundreds of thousands a year in stock. I don't know where he got it from. He wasn't a businessman. He didn't get married to those rich people that, and somebody bought 6 apples, didn't support him afterwards. But he actually did hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. I was walking the other day, he says, oh, you're son of Rav Brevda? The old man says, one time he didn't have money. His sister calls me, she used to be the garbage stucker. There's $1,000 waiting for you. He says, this is 40 years ago. I said, what? Yeah. And I came there, they showed a whole stack of them. Where did it come from? It wasn't a fundraiser. But people used to give him, asking for brachas, give him money as a zgula, and he used to take most of that money and give it out. So Lamaisa, this is only a hakdama to what in addition to the Rosh Kollel, but Lamaisa, Rosh Kollel said more or less what I intended to say. I didn't have much time to prepare. The Yetzer Hara got in the way, and certain topics I wanted to talk about. And everything took me hours and hours and hours and hours to figure out to get it 100% correct. He was very makpid on emes. Bezlavaya, I didn't say much. I just said we lost Isha emes. Isha emes, we lost the person in emes. He was very medactic to be 100% straight and good and gleich. And people shouldn't fool him. When I spoke the other time, was it 2 years ago? I said over a story that when we lived in England, the neighbor next door decided to build out. But it must have been a chazanishnik, a shear of quite a few Beli Guzman. Listen, we had a huge backyard, a third of an acre. So he decided to block almost an entire view. In the meantime, that morning he got a check from one of his talmidim, who was a lawyer, called a solicitor in England. And it was an extremely big check. He was makpid on tefillah, so he asked his oilim to come every morning from Golders Green to Stamford Hill, which is about 30 to 40 minutes local driving. There's no highways in England. They're not up to there yet. In a few years from now, 100 years from now, they'll be up to there. And every week they came, and he opens the mail, and he says, wow, this is a big check. And he looks at it. I don't know the amount, but he didn't get such a check for a long time for his stock, because it wasn't for him. He rips it up, and I said to myself, I better leave fast. I know something is about to explode over here. And he looks around. Oh, you're still left in Golders Green? Come here. Takes you in Gemara. He says, listen, take this to him and tell him that various he did 2 weeks ago and that night in this place, and then he sends me a check. I don't need his money. Phase 1. Phase 2, I was home that day because I was sick, and I saw the building going on, but I wasn't going to tell him about it. Next day I went down to him. I was still home. I had fever. I said, why, they were building? Oh, yes. He called up the same guy, same lawyer. Says, I need a favor from you. He says, yeah, what? I need you to take care of this. Come and take. And the guy came. Why? Because he knew it was emes. He got the check back, the guy. Don't worry. He knew it was emes. He knew it was emes. When you deal with emes, you can be blunt with people. When you have to wiggle and this and this and this and this, his whole thing, everything was based on emes. The one word, his godless with the Kisvei Agra, was the Vilna Gaon says a lot of the time, Kamash, like it said the first words of the pasuk, Kamash, let's see Vayomer. Now figure it out. So his whole godless was that they didn't use any technology, no computers. Kol HaTorah Kula, whatever he knew, he found a place in Nigla, Nistor, Zoya, or Arizal, some place that word could explain a whole pasuk. That's his whole godless of his Sfarim. And they worked on one word for 6 months. I worked a few hours to prepare a few pages. 6 months on one word. Bili Guzma. And I have an older brother in Bnei Brak who's a huge Talmud Chacham. He started learning when he was 3, and he's older than me. He hasn't stopped yet, Baruch Hashem. Mamshi, huge Talmud. Whatever you ask him, he usually says he doesn't know. Now, if he davened in the same shul, come up to 10 minutes later, he just remembered. He always just remembers. And my father called him and says, this word. And he called him again and again for 6 months. He says, Tata, ich weiß nicht. I don't know. He said, no, we have to come up with the answer. I can't continue the sefer if I don't skip. And if I don't know, then it means that maybe I'm not ready to write. Who knows what it is? And one day he turns around to my mother and my brother who lived with him at the time. And he says, we are taking the next trip to Vilna Gaon's Keva. He said, what? Ma, the word. You know the whole word. Every Shabbos table he spoke, but this word he doesn't know. My brother tried to help him. My mother says, she'll look it up. And nothing worked. Nothing worked. They got on the first plane. They got to Vilna. And my brother told me, he was there with him. He says, Tata had a lot of things to daven for. He had a whole list. He once explained to his oilim, they used to come this 40-minute drive in the morning. The Shemona Esrei takes him long because the last 5 minutes is all their tzaras, nothing to do with him. Everybody asks him to daven. All their stuff he davens for. And he said the Tata cried for 4 hours straight with tears. I said, no. I said, it can't be. No, he says, yeah, just for one thing. When he felt he's about to collapse, he said, back to the airport, next flight. He never cared about money. Money didn't mean anything. He always had Hashem always sent him what he needed somehow, this way or that way. Even if he had a flight to schedule, it doesn't mean anything. Next flight. He came back. Now he hasn't slept for 2 days, and didn't have the right foods either, and not the right water either. And he sat down with all the tiredness, opened the same Sfarim. He used to have a huge table full of Sfarim. On the spot, he wrote 16 pages to explain the one word. Now you want to know what word it is? I don't know. And my brother does. 16 pages on that one word. You know what Siyata D'Shmaya that is? Siyata D'Shmaya, it's like unbelievable. But he could have done for many things by the Vilna Gaon. Like the Rosh Kollel said, he wasn't well. Since he was 20, he was never well. Almost every sickness in the world he had. I mean, seriously. Doctors used to call him and ask him for advice for their patient. I have a patient here. As a matter of fact, I remember when I was younger, I used to try to criticize him nicely, like bacha things that know better than parents. So it bothered me. He used to come to the shiurim half an hour, 45 minutes late. So one Motzei Shabbos, I was in a rush. I used to go to the Motzei Shabbos shiur. We lived in Borough Park. And he came extremely late that week, and I said to myself, okay, tonight I'm going to walk him home, and I'll not let him have it, but nicely So I walked him home, and I walked him up the steps, and mother looks at me like, what happened? You're like, yeah, you need something? No. I said, Tata, there's a big oilam waiting tonight. Yeah. And no, I said, so what do you want to ask him? Why he came late? You know better than me. No, I don't know, I know better than you. But there was a big oilam waiting there. So let me tell you, every time I come late, there's a good reason for it. I was about to leave to the shiur this time 10 minutes early. And I got a phone call from Eretz Yisrael on Shabbos. There's somebody on his deathbed in this and this hospital. What should we do? Because somebody knew that he had the same thing years ago and he got cured. And I told him, go to my apartment in Bnei Brak those days, open, and if you can't get in, just break the door open this and this cabinet, take out this and this book of medicine, page this and this is the answer to the cure. I wasn't going to wait, go to the shiur if they can't find that book. I was going to battle the shiur, it was a Pekuach Nefesh. And they did it, and I waited till they got to the hospital, and the person opened his eyes. Then I came to the shiur. Now, any more questions? There's one more time I asked him. I forgot what it was. And since then, I decided, I'm not one to... Kids, this is Akdoma. I want to really, really thank, name of my time, Mishpacha, the Rosh Kollel, Rabbi Travis, for bringing the Olam together today over here in the Schus of the Yartzheit, over Meir Zatzal. He wasn't just an ordinary person, like we heard already from Rosh Kollel. He had talents and hidden talents, and Siyata D'Shmaya is beyond the rest. And Kishbok should have Rosh Kollel, and all those who gathered here, they should have unbelievable Siyata D'Shmaya L'malim Derech HaTeva B'Kol Elyonim B'Schus of coming together and making the neshama happy today. When I first got up here, I saw a few people, and not really stared at me, but looked at me and they looked at these things over here, and they're wondering, so I remember the Maisa, a true Maisa. It's nothing to do with the drasha, but just a true Maisa. It's good to start off with the episode, the Rosh Kollel said, first you say a few jokes. Yeah, but so what happened was like this. There was one of the big rebbes in Yerushalayim, one of the very big Chassidish rebbes. They decided to go to Haifa one time for vacation in the summertime. The problem is there's beaches there and then there's pretzes, but he was a very big tzaddik and he had his own min and own place to stay. He knew that 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning there's nobody in the streets yet. 6, 7 o'clock they start and go, and he needed the air, the fresh air from next to the beach over there. So he went there with his gabba, and every morning they used to go for a walk, come back, and never nechshlan anything, Baruch Hashem. One morning, as they were going for a walk, there was a father and a son. They weren't exactly yeshivish. Yarmulkes fell off on the way when they were running. Shorts, Baruch Hashem. The tzitzis, they were too hot to wear it properly, and it was before Elois, I'm down in the Kav's Chus. And the father says to the son said to the father, "Hey, what's that?" The Rebbe was dressed all shemaina begodim, and so was the gabba with the thick gartel. And he said, "They're also Jewish." So the Rebbe told his gabba a true story. This is exactly what it's going to look like. Mashiach is going to come. He says, "What do you mean?" He said, "Mashiach is going to come. What's going to happen? Everybody's going to hear Mashiach come to the Beis HaMikdash. He's next to the Beis HaMikdash someplace. Come, let's build the Beis HaMikdash." So, right away, who's going to be there first? The people on the bikes, electronic bikes, cars. They're going to get there first. going to be thousands of people there. And then all people like us, all Litvish, we're going to finish the Taisvis or the Reb Chaim, Nocha Kvetch, put on our ties, and cover the Mashiach, and go, be there. Be tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people. The Hasidim also heard about it, he said. The Hasidim first are going to take a nice warm coffee. Kaveh El Hashem, before you go to Hashem, you get a good kaveh. And then they're all going, that's what the Rebbe said, not me. Then they're all going to run to the mikveh. The mikveh is going to be jam-packed. You can't squeeze. Hey, put a needle in there. So all the Hasidim at the same time, and all, how many mikvahs are there? And it's going to take a long time. And then, they went to the mikveh, they go home, put on the bekeshes, the streimels, the gartels, big day Shabbos, weiße Socken, everything. And then suddenly all these black guys dressed up are going to come, and people there who never saw them are going to say, who are they? So people are going to say they're also Yidden, they're also Jews. That's exactly what's going to happen. So even though this grew, Baruch Hashem, I'm still a Brevdanik, one of the sons, nothing to worry about. And the reason why I grew it, because I feel that it helps us in Avodas Hashem. And my father did teach us, not by saying the words, whatever you have to do for Avodas Hashem, don't look at what other people are going to say. Don't ignore it. I meet some American friends and say, what happened to you? I say, yeah, what? Used to be normal. I said, what do you mean, look normal? Yeah, what are these things? I said, I don't know. As if it matters, but if some reason it helps me, Baruch Hashem, the Belzer of Rav Brevda, who was Mam Shamalach, said, and it's not for you people, it's for people, the Brevdas, who are also Jewish, that if a person never cuts the pace, it's a zgula for your Shemayim. And I feel in my case it helps, Baruch Hashem. I'm not telling anybody to here to grow the pace. Do me a favor. I want to be good terms with the Rosh Koilel. But Lemaisa. So I'm also Baruch Hashem. So now we start. Oh, there is Agdomus. Now we can start Lemaisa. We still have 10 minutes left. Baruch Hashem.
Runner brothers.
The Maisa, the Ikka of getting together on somebody's Yartzheit is like the Gemara says in Kedushin, Kenoch nafshei der Rav Asi. When Asi was nifta, Eilu Rabbanon den Ketune l'shmaitei. Rashi says, what does it mean? Niskaptzu lebeis HaMedrash. They got together in Beis HaMedrash after the Levaya of Asi. V'omru, and it says, and they said, Kol sheshama shmua chadosha mipiv. Whoever heard something new from Rav Asi, that's what Rashi says. The Talmidim said, let's all get together so we can repeat the Torahs of Rav Asi, in order we shouldn't forget it. That's the idea of getting together to speak about the Torahs and Anhogis of a tzaddik, especially on the day of the Yartzeit Yom Elula. And Rashi writes in Yevamis Kuf Chav Beis, Ubetshuvas Hagoyim Matzasi. That's the Rashi's lashon. Kol hane rigled amaroi, all these Yartzeit of Amaroim, hainu yoim shemes boy Adam Gadol, a day that's a Yartzeit of Adam Gadol, koivim oisel lichvoidoi, that day you designate to mechav the Adam Gadol. I bittul Torah? No, there's no bittul Torah then. There's the Adam Gadol who served Hashem, the day of the Yartzeit you designate for what? Every year, כשמגיעים Oiso Yoim, Miskaptzim Talmidei Chachamim. When the day of the Yartzeit comes, the Talmidei Chachamim gather, like people here, Talmidei Chachamim, people who learn Torah. Ubayim al kiva im sharham lohishav yeshiva sham. They come together to put a yeshiva on the kiva. Doesn't mean they have to be mamish by the kiva. It means that people have to get together a place where we can discuss the maisim, the Torahs from the Adam Gadol. And it says in Sfar v'kach no v'yo la'asis v'melula. It's kedai and worthy to do this thing, that people should get together with their friends and say the things they heard from him and the minhagim that they saw at tzaddik, in order to elevate the neshama of the tzaddik, as Chazal say on certain kinus l'tzaddik shu'ano lehem v'ano la'olam. The Gemara says in Sanhedrin, when you get together and speak about the tzaddik neshama has ano, and I'm sure the neshama is here now, and in Shemaim they have ano. You repeat things from the tzaddik, And that day is his big day up there. And it's a very big segula for the neshama. And this Rashi teaches us, not like some people think, that the day of Tzaddik is only a day for making sudas and drinking a lot of different schnapsen, whether the bottle costs 180 shekel or 360 shekel or 540 shekel. That's not the most important part of the Yartzheit of a Tzaddik. Yes, some kiddush have the minhag, but also have minhag, the people say Vatayers there, but a gathering without any Vatayers for a Tzaddik, it's not what the Tzaddik wants. So we'll try to say just one or two things, one or two Nekudas Toivos, as Rabbeinu calls it, because Hayom Kotzav HaMalacha Meruba, there's a lot to do, and you people have to go back to learn the regular learning. It also should be a schus for the neshama, and there's not a lot of time to be marich here, and in half an hour here is mincha, and I didn't dam for the Omid yet today, so I need the Omid for mincha. So we'll try to finish before that in Mitzvah Hashem. So don't worry, I'm not going to keep you 3 hours as Avimayri used to do, minimum 3 hours. As a matter of fact, one time, I remember the last drosh I heard from Yerushalayim, I was in a rush, and I sat by the door, because people want to see that I'm going out, and I had 20 minutes for the drosha. 20 minutes for the drosha. I said, mamash by the door, I could just whisk out, nobody would know the difference. And my father didn't notice I came in, it wouldn't be not covered. After 20 minutes I finished the drasha, my luck. And I look at my watch and I see, wow, 4 hours, nobody walked in and walked out. 4 hours felt like 20 minutes. Ma'aseh shoyi b'didi avuvde. The one says of Chaim Kanevsky, how was the Chazon Ish zoiche to be a Gadol Hador? Chazon Ish was a very quiet person, extremely quiet. His Torahs, we know, he spoke in public, my father told me, twice in his life. And before he spoke, he used to say it over to a lot of people, you can say this in public? He didn't have the self-confidence to go in public. He was mamish a quiet person. And he was still the Gadol Hador of those times. And just a quick story, I said over last time, it's good that we should hear it over here. The first time when my father came to Yitzhak, I'm not going to say the whole story how he came because it takes a few hours to say it. But Rav Chatzkel told him he should go to Chazon Ish. So he went to the Chazon Ish first time, and he says, "Who are you?" "I'm the first American bacher to come to Yitzhak." Chazon Ish never knew his name. He only knew the American bacher. There was only one. Only one. He came by boat. It's a long story. He told him a shtickl Torah on Trumas and Maasros. Chazon Ish sat there and smiled. A long shtickl Torah. And my brother in Bnei Brak has it if you want to know what it is. He actually has it written now. And Chazon Ish didn't ask him anything. He agreed with everything. It was a chiddush. My father thought, Chazon Ish and him are going to start a little Rischa D'Oraisa. But since his way of learning was very, very straight, and Chazon Ish's also was the same Derech HaLimud. Chazon Ish got up, hugged him and kissed him for 3 minutes, literally. And he said, Makana Bacha, you can stay to learn with me 2 sdorim a day b'chavrusa, whichever 2 you want. So my father said it would be an honor and a privilege. I just need one favor from the Chazon Ish before I do it. He says, what's the favor? Chazon Ish should please speak to the Brisker Rav and explain to him that the yeshiva is about to open for me. It took my father a year to convince the Brisker Rav to open it, but he knew he was holding there. That the reason I won't be learning in my yeshiva or the Brisker Rav is because the Chazon Ish took me as a chavrusa. Chazon Ish looked at him like this. He says, do me a favor, go back to the Brisker Rav. I don't want to start out with him. He was afraid of Brisker Rav. But the Maisa, his Derech HaLimud was so straight. Chazon Ish never had chavrusa. You know anybody knows Chazon Ish chavrusas? I asked a lot of people. He never had chavrusas. And he offered him 2 sdorim a day chavrusas. You know what that means? I'm named after the Chazon Ish and the Brisker Rav. So he asked Chaim Kanevsky, how Chazon Ish zoiche to be the Gadol Hador? So Chazon Ish says, because of one thing that he specialized in. He specialized in one mitzvah, And anybody who specializes in that mitzvah, including all of us over here, could also be Gedolei Hador. I'm assuming a lot of you are born in America, right? And Feldheim Publishing titled the book, my father, Lifetime Teaching of an American-Born Gadol. The Chiddush was that he was an American-born Gadol. I disagree with the book, by the way. I should either burned or banned, because they took out all the Musa parts they took out of the book. And when they asked why, they were told because it won't sell. So I said, they don't write it. They don't, but it sells. It sells. But Lemaisa, the Chazon Ish was very, very makpid on kibbud aveim. Very makpid aveim. Rav Chaim said that he remembers that Chazon Ish was a huge masmid, and he would stop learning every single day and go and visit his mother and discuss the weather and the news and whatever was on her mind, as long as she needed, and it wasn't considered bittul Torah. Interestingly enough, Chazon Ish once went to a certain class to test them. And some fathers also came along to see how the kids are doing and this and that. And one kid turns to the father and says, "Hey, how did he grow up to be a Gadol Hador?" And Chazon Ish heard it. He said, "You know how I became a Gadol Hador? Because I was mekayim mitzvahs kibbud aveim b'shleimus. You can also be a Gadol Hador," he said. You can also be a Gadol Hador. And so this was by the Chazon Ish. My father Zatzal, he was very, very mechaber his parents, extremely mechaber his parents. He was zoich those days to have a father in America who was a Shema Shabbos, which was a Chiddush Nifla. They had 820 mispalim in the shul there, and 20 were Shema Shabbos. His father and him were two of them. Rabbi Yankel Schiffer got married to the Briskerov's daughter, and his family was another one. And because my father was the Briskerov, that's how that shidduch came along. He convinced the Briskerov to take Rabbi Yankel Schiffer and said a different gedolim that I know, real gedolim. And he was very mechaber his parents. He went to learn, first learned in Mir, and used to come home every night. He saw his parents. He went to Lakewood, and there was no telephones those days like today, no cell phones, no communication. It wasn't that you went to Shema Shabbos and they said Lakewood and somebody took you to Lakewood. It didn't exist those days, all these rides, all these things. As a matter of fact, he said when Reb Aaron had to go to New York, he took the bus to Port Authority and a taxi from there to Borough, but just like everybody else. How would his parents know how he was doing? Every single night after third Seder, and it was a masmid, it wasn't some Bach in Yeshiva there. Every single night after third Seder, he would write them either a letter or a postcard. Thursday night, he was an artist, would draw them a beautiful picture with the word Shabbos in it. Every week a different design. Kept on going for 2 years that way. As a matter of fact, I was looking for those postcards, one of the things I wanted to bring you today. From the Shemaim, I couldn't find it, because I have 4 of them ended up by me somehow. But the Maisa, to draw a picture like that takes at least half an hour, an hour. He was an artist, a perfectionist artist, a perfectionist. The way he spoke his drasha was also like a perfectionist. He once went to a doctor, a goy, who looks into a person's eyes and sees everything wrong and right with them. So the doctor says, "What do you do for a living?" He says, "Why? I'm going to pay you." "No, what do you do for a living?" But I was looking in his eyes. He said, "I'm a rabbi." "And what do you do?" He said, "I preach." "Let me tell you something about you. I've never seen a person like you in my entire life." And he sees he's a world famous doctor. He died already, but he was a world famous doctor. "When you give a speech, let me tell you something about yourself, about you. You know from beginning to end exactly every word you're going to say and how long it's going to take." So my father told me, "You're right." My father told me the Maisa. When they added on to me quietly, and when I go to yeshivas and they tell me I have 45 minutes to speak, I know it's going to take 57. But I can't make it any shorter. So I say, yes, 45 I speak, and then I add on a little bit. But I knew exactly, he knew the minutes exactly. It was very, 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 very straight. So his letters and his postcards and his pictures also the same way. Every single night to communicate with his parents, everything is okay. And everything is, and he's learning. And Rav Aaron wrote in his Tzavah that he should write all the Mishnah Aarons that are coming out till today, 60 years later. He should be the one writing it. But he told Rav Shneur, Rav Aaron's son, that he can't do it. Why? Rav Aaron wanted his shiurim to be written. Rav Aaron was a genius of a genius. I learned by Rav Aaron's Talmud in Monsey. And he used to give us a pilpul share once a week for an hour. Every week he would tell us, this took Rav Aaron a minute and a half, or 2.5 minutes, or 3 minutes for mispilpul shir. He gave pilpul shir for an hour. It was loaded. He was a genius. He just spoke and spoke and spoke and spoke. How many Bachman understood that Chazor is a shir? So he once wanted a shir to be written up by somebody, and nobody in Shiva was able to do it. So Baron went over to my father. No, the Shiva once, I'll do it. He understood the whole shir. It was straight. And he wrote it up, and he gave it to Rabbi Aaron. First, his handwriting was like a printer. Straight. Somebody once took his handwriting to a frum graphologist. And he says, no, what do you say to this? He says, I'll only tell you if you tell me who it is. I said, they don't tell me. He said, I can't hold myself back. Who is it? It was a Chassidish guy. And didn't want him to become a Chassid. The guy told me this. He said, who is it? I said, I can't tell you. I said, why? This person shechted his Yetzer Hara. There's nothing wrong with him. He's such a perfect person. So Aaron saw the way that Shir was written up. He went to him next week, make you write it again. He says, fine. But then he told Aaron, listen, it takes me a lot of hours to write because to reprocess everything. And he used to lose out on Seder. So Aaron saw those two shiurim, how straight and how neat it was, and how the ma'asadik it was. He left it so that he should write his forum, but he had to turn down the offer. Chazon Ish's offer, he had to turn down to be his chavrusa. Aaron's offer, the ma'aseh never would have finished it, because still today, there are groups and groups of Megillah writing about Aaron's things, and it's so deep that they haven't finished it yet. Another story of Kibbutz Aviyim. I remember about 60 years ago when we lived in Bnei Brak. I was a little kid then, and my father decided he would go to Yerushalayim for Shabbos or somebody's simcha. And my father was afraid to leave me at home with my mother together, and I was 5 years old. He figured it was safer to take me along with him than leave me with her. And in one of the Igris, he writes to somebody, Velvel is still wild. He writes it, and Aaron printed it, Baruch Hashem. No, it's Yashis, it's straight, there's nothing wrong with it. So I was about 5 years old, and those days going from Yerushalayim to Bnei Brak took about 4 hours. None of you, I remember it, to go from one place to another bus, another this, another that. It was a schlep. When he went to the Chazon Ish, it was a whole day trip for him. He used to go leave in the morning 4 hours, speak to him, and come back. It was a whole day event. So we were going to go there for Shabbos, and we went for Shabbos, and those people who were making the simcha weren't exactly our type. Don't have to go into detail. We're far from yeshivish, and my father didn't want us to eat the food there, not only because of Trumas and Maisis, other problems also. So he rented a room someplace, and he took along all the food for Shabbos. He davened together with them Shabbos morning, and had some shul in Yerushalayim. I remember the guy come and go over to him, give him a gold thing. It says Revi on it, so I knew he's getting Revi. My father said, "You stay here." And I would leave to the thing that I'd run around the shul. He said, "Stay over here." I stay there, Baruch Hashem. And after davening, he says, "Now we got to go home to eat. We're not going to eat over there." I say, "Okay." I was a 5-year-old kid. I understand why we came. I mean, we came to somebody's simcha and have to eat ourselves. Fine. And then he says, if we got to bring hard-boiled eggs, Shabbos in the morning is makbid on Chol Shabbos. So he asked the person to stay there, give him a few hard-boiled eggs. He gave him a few. He cracked the first one, it was raw. Second one, the kids had a mess on the table. I remember that it made an unbelievable hashpar me that Shabbos. Years later, now I want to know, why did he go for that Shabbos? First, let me share a little bit with you what he spoke about that simcha over there. He spoke about the Maram in Rothenburg, who was nifter in 1293. And he spoke about the fact that he was incarcerated, how big he was, what a big Pesach he was, what a big Talmud Chacham he was, what a Chedushik Torah. And to that kind of a crowd, obviously he tried to give him a picture of what a Yid should be. He told them that he made piyutim, and he wrote a Pirish in Mishnayos, Seder and Taharos. He lived in France, and after they burnt on that Friday, Tes Tammuz, the 24 wagons with the Talmud, as we say, one of the kinnis. Maram Rothenburg couldn't take it anymore. He couldn't stay there. He wrote the kinna that would say on Tisha B'Av, Shalis Esufa Be'esh L'Shem Avilayich, and he moved to Germany. In Germany, they started having redifus on the Yidden there. It's an old tradition they have in Germany. And the case there forbid anybody to leave Germany to a different country. But the Maram in Rothenburg decided, like many other Jews, he can't stay there. And he decided he's going to go to Eretz Yisrael. From there he went to Italy with a whole group of Jews, and they weren't caught. In Italy he met a Meshumad who knew him. And this Meshumad had a terrible anger against Talmidei Chachamim. And he got the authorities to arrest him, and they put him back to Germany from Italy. They put him in jail. First they didn't let anybody into him. He was in jail for 7 years, the Maram Rothenburg. 7 years he sat in jail. It's a Musa Haskafas. In those 7 years, he continued writing Chedush Torah. First they didn't give him Sfarim, eventually gave him some Sfarim. Eventually, they were able to bribe some of the guards to allow the Talmidim to go in and out there every day. And he had some Sfarim, he didn't have everything he wanted, but he still kept his shaykhs with everybody, all the shaylas, entire community, with such an Adam Gadol, kept shaykhs with them. And he answered this unbelievable amount of tshuvas that he wrote over there. Unbelievable amount of tshuvas. He was very, very upset about one thing. They didn't have a Sefer Torah. And a lot of people have the minhag to be Maver Sedra from a Sefer Torah. He didn't have a minyan, fine, but a Sefer Torah, not to Maver Sedra from a Sefer Torah. He davened to Hashem, and he begged Hashem for Sefer Torah. Because tefillah helps. And he knew that Hashem would do something for him. And Nes happened from Shemayim. And one of the 12 Sefer Torah that Moshe Rabbeinu wrote the last day of his life, actually was a day before, his Niftan Shabbos, wrote on Friday, we called it the last day of his life, came to him over there. And he rewrote from that Sefer Torah word for word what Sefer Torah should be like. And if you want to see that Sefer Torah that he rewrote, you can find it in Prague, in the Alta Naya Shul. You can actually go there today, and it's actually there, in the Alta Naya Shul. There was an Alta Shul, an old Shul, the Naya, the new one, then the Alta Naya, then the Alta Naya Shul. So whichever one it is, when you go there, let me know if you found it. But it's actually there, the Sefer Torah that he handwrote in jail. One of his Talmidim, the Rosh, was one of his big Talmidim, started raising money to get him out of there. And he was very successful. Who didn't want to give anything? But the government there wanted 20,000 mark, which is millions today. Quite a lot of diras in Yerushalayim. And it was a huge amount of money. And the Maram Rothenburg paskin that you're not allowed to redeem him, because Halacha and Shulchan Aruch ein poidim es hashvuim yoyse michdei demeyen mipnei tikkun olam. You don't get anybody in jail if it's more than the value of the person. And Maram Rothenburg writes, when a person goes al Kiddush Hashem, the same time he wrote it, a person doesn't feel any agony, any harm. Voraya, a person touches something hot, they scream. He says he never saw anybody doing a mitzvah Kiddush Hashem or Chas Shalom, going on Kiddush Hashem, that cries or screams anything. But the Maaseh is talking about himself. He meant to say that he doesn't feel any pain while he's in jail, even though he didn't have his friends, didn't have minyanim, didn't have anything. He had a Sefer Torah, he had Sfarim, he was able to write shuvas. That was his whole world. After he was nifta, they thought they can get the body out, but the government there wouldn't give the body out. They tried to negotiate this way, that way, and nothing worked. 20,000 mark, he said, no, that was for a live body. Dead body costs much more. Like just the same way as we have the friends, the Palestinians. They have the same cheshbonis. The kids, they didn't know what to do. 1 year passed by, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. His body is there and didn't get rotten. It stayed the same it was. Without a refrigerator. 5 years, 10 years, 13 years, 14 years. There was a big Avir. His name was Alexander Ziskind. He was a big Gevir and decided one day, you know what? Then we can negotiate. He was one of the biggest Gevirim in the neighborhood there. And they made a cheshm, if he sells most of his fortune, most, I don't know if it means 75, 85, 95, whatever it is, They don't have enough money to get him out. The same day he sold most of his fortune, they went with the money and they carried out the Maram Mutterberg on the shoulder, and there was a Levai, and they buried him. You can imagine the Maram Mutterberg up there in Shemayim, the simcha he had, and he wanted to pay back this Alexander. So the same night it came to him in a dream. He said, there are no words to thank you. Wow, what a great thing you did. A mace mitzvah and everything else. I would like to repay you for the chesed you did. I'll give you one out of two choices. Either you can have ashiras, your children, atzoiv kol hadoyros, and not ashiras you have now. Triple, quadruple. You can't imagine what ashiras you have. Atzoiv kol hadoyros, all generations that follow you. For the rest of their lives, everything. Or you can choose to die very soon and come up to Gan Eden and sit next to me. On the spot, he decided in a dream, I don't need money. I don't need money. Next to you. And nobody knew about this. A few weeks later, some people say it was Yom Kippur, the different Chulukah days in the story, he was nifter. And people said, Zu Torah, Zu Schora. I mean, he took out the Maram and Muttenberg, as if we know Hashem's books, we know what to do. Till I think somebody in the family told him, yeah, he had a choice. Could have stayed here. Could have been trillionaire, bigger than, not the president of America, his friend. But he chose, in a second, Gan Eden over everything else. So this was the story. He said, in a place where we weren't allowed to eat, a drink, I remember I took seltzer. I remember as a 5, I took seltzer, I took something. But people there, my father, we just stayed. We dried out of it. And my father asked the question, do you ever see somebody that's zoiche to Gan Eden in a dream? You ever heard such a story any place? In a dream, a person could be zoiche to Gan Eden? If a person walks way down here, they get Gan Eden. A person has a schus down here in a dream, it's almost unheard of. And tried to inspire these people, and they explained it. They explained it in length, but the time here doesn't allow it. Mincha is supposed to be 10 after 4, we'll see. But it's supposed to be 10 after 4. That he tried to explain to these people. Huh? Me too. And my father also Michael Rushkia. And he tried to explain to them that this Alexander, this wealthy billionaire that he was, his whole life was a Torah life. His whole life was Torah and mitzvahs and ma'asim tovim. It wasn't a dream. He had a choice this way and it chose that because he saw probably the way Maram Mutterberg was shining. He saw it. No, his whole life he prepared himself for Gan Eden. A person that prepares himself for Gan Eden and don't live a materialistic life, and a life is Torah, avodah, gemilas chasonim, tefillah, tzedakah, chesed. A person like this, of course, gets to go to Gan Eden. So this is the drasha he said over there. But I still wanted to know why he went to such a place, and we had broken raw eggs for Shabbos morning, and we didn't scramble them, don't worry. And what's pshat? What's pshat? He took me along and my brother. He was a quiet guy. He wasn't like me. He could have stayed with my mother. Took us along. What's the real pshat? Why did he go there? I was a little kid. I don't know. So recently I asked my brother, I said, tell me pshat in that. Why did we go with that? Oh, you remember? You remember the drasha? I said, he filled me in on most of the drasha because I didn't remember that well. I don't even know if I paid attention that well. But I remember it's a story I remembered. And he says, you know why you went to Yerushalayim that Shabbos? Because my parents' who lived in America happened to be in Eretz Yisrael for that Shabbos. They happened to be in Yerushalayim, so these people who they knew from Crown Heights invited them to the Simcha. So since his parents were in Yerushalayim for Shabbos, and this is where they spent the Shabbos, he said, Kibud Avay, he's also going to go there. And it wasn't his derech to go to such places usually. Even though he stayed by people, they told me he was very normal. So once I met a lady in the supermarket, she says, you know, your father's very normal. So I said, you mean he was? He says, yeah, he was. It wasn't so long. I said, what do you mean he was normal? He stayed with us for 3 weeks. He didn't bombard us about Torahs by the Shabbos day. Not one. What did he speak about? Current events, history, blah, blah, blah. Your father knows. Guess what? Her husband went to learn for 5 years straight afterwards. Because it was normal. You know how to speak to certain crowds. And Lamaisa, we have to learn from this, that he was a person that could have had everything. But it was offered the smallest nut and $250,000. I don't know how many of you are offered $250,000 70 years later over here. I wasn't. I got $5,000. But $250,000, those days, $250,000. Now, my father told me an interesting thing, but 2 of those millionaires, on their checks, had 6 signatures till they got it correct. They couldn't even write. Somebody had to fill it out for them. That's how American these were. But they're the Muslim in business. With Shem Shabbos, some of them had their nisyonis. We can't judge those people. Okay, 410. Okay, the other 6 pages we'll leave Mit Hashem for a different time. It's not B'Sheit Shemayim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should help us. There should be a true nachas ruach for the fathers and Shom at this Medrash, the tefillas, the limud Torah, and hopefully a lot of chesed, a lot of tzedakah, a lot of ben odom lachaveiroi. And let's try to daven this mincha now with kavanah, little nishmosai. This was his whole life, and hopefully the tefillas will be accepted. What I
said. The second will make the first one look like child's play. The third one would be an Eis Tzora LeYaakov, Umimenu Yivosher. From there they would be saved. So said the Chofetz Chaim. Eis Tzora LeYaakov, Umimenu Yivosher. From there will be Yeshua for Klal Yisrael. Whatever that means in Eis Tzora LeYaakov, a time of great difficulty. I would say that's what we're going through now. Because of the Mashiach. As you know, Rabbi Chon was something like a novi in his time. He would say, Chasadik Devocha, what things that he said in Kobetz Mamoy, he saw ahead all the different aspects of communism, socialism, and democracy. He spoke about them in great detail. Based on the words of the Chofetz Chaim, this is what Rabbi Chon said. Rak ha-maskil be'eis hazois. Only a maskil. A maskil is a person who discerns, who perceives, an understanding person. Be'eis hazois, at such a time, at the time of Eis Tzora LeYaakov. Yidoim, keep quiet, Yitkoinen, and prepare. Maybe such a person will be certain to see the Nechama of Yerushalayim. Meaning, in order to be prepared for the English Mashiach, such a person has to be a master. A master. What does it mean, a master? Maybe the Yidom and the Yitzchayim, perhaps, is going on the master. To think to yourself, what does it mean to think out the times that we're going through now in Klal Yisrael? The Gaon says on the Pasuk in Mishlei, Lokachat Musa Haskel, Tzedek u'mishpat meishonim. Right at the beginning, in Pasuk Aleph, in Pasuk Gimel, and Pasuk Aleph in Mishlei. Lokachat Musa Haskel means successful, to be successful. Haskel means the man taskimu, to be successful in your thinking. Tzedek means to be native to other people. Mishpat means to be rigzu ve'al tefetol, to force the rigzat over the yitzhahara. Or meishorim, to be forthright, to be dominant, and to be yashus in your behavior. Rabbi Sailanias Daiti, I think we can say that Reb Shlomo was a masculine. First of all, he was exceptionally successful in his Habotzas Torah. I would say that he was Mamali his Tafkid in Olam Hazeh B'Melua in the following way. He himself was a masculine. He discerned many, many things. People who spoke to him had tremendous insight and tremendous foresight, and exceptionally forthright in what he said. Tzedek, his Maisim Tovim, his Gemilas Chasadim, as Yadua is known. Mishpat, I think that was the main chalos. He encouraged the whole chabur. We were all at the time, I must say, university students in England at the time, and he moved us on, some as accountants, lawyers, architects, different people, and we all became B'nai Torah, literally. He never ever said a word about going to learn Torah, believe it or not. He spoke about the chashivas of Torah. All of us were in some sort of profession. We all learned from his chabur. And because of that mamela, we took it on. He never mentioned anything about that. He only mentioned the hashivas of Torah. I thought that was incredibly brilliant. Never to mention anything. In other, just to give them a mazim the hashivas of Torah. And many of us, the great Moshe Kollel in Los Angeles, Mashgiach in Toras Moshe, many people were Talmidim, and they caught the message from Reb Shlomo. A tremendous master, tremendous haskalah. Meishorim in his forthrightness, especially in that way. The Pasuk says, Vayi David, l'chol derach of maskil, v'Hashem imon. David was labeled as a maskil. David was somebody who had tremendous understanding and discernment of the time. Maskil David, v'Yosef Amorah tefillah. There we learn. David HaMelech, in his great Haskalah, realized in the situation that he was in, nothing would help him at this time except tefillah. Nothing would help him at such a time. Rabbi Said, the Sibona says on that paper that everything that David felt in Kuf Mendes, which we describe the scene in a minute, was all the finger on the pulse of Klal Yisrael at the times of Iksa the Mashiach. Everything that went on in this paper. Let me explain the scene first of all. As you know, David was supposed to turn up to the Rosh Chodesh banquet, and he didn't turn up. He ran into the field, and Yonasan shot the arrows on. From there, he went to Noi. He was starting hungry. It was a case of bulness. He ate from the Lechem Achonim, which was really not allowed for him. From there, he went to Gat, and behaved like a Meshugana. From there, he went to Asadulam, where he looked under 400 Mitzukei Lei. Unbelievable story. He had Ya'ar Cheres, where he had Pelot Kof Gimel, Mirvat Sif, Mirvat Merlon. And then eventually, he ran down into Ein Gedi and stood in the cave. As you know, he went into the cave, and as soon as he went inside the cave, a spider came and made a web right in front of him. So apparently, when the soldiers came in and Shaul came later to relieve himself, no one would be behind it because there was a spider's web there. Interesting medrash, Rabbi said. Chazal bring out the David HaMelech asked me, what on earth did you make Meshugoyim for? What on earth did you make insects and spiders for? You'll see in the end, you yourself will succeed. When he went to Gat, they knew straight to Achish Melech Gat that this is the one who killed Goliath, this is the one who killed Goliath, and therefore they wanted to kill him. And he acted like a Meshuggah. He dribbled and wrote on the wall that Achish Melech Gat owes me thousands of dollars, whatever. And he said, it's Meshuggah, how can you kill Goliath? And then when he went into the cave, he was saved by this unbelievable situation. Shaul, with 3,000 soldiers, was outside the cave waiting to kill him. And David realized at such a moment, nothing would help me more but the koyach of tefillah. Koyach of tefillah will help me. Look at this man doesn't realize. In reality, he's coming to chase me for my life, but really he's at my mercy. Unbelievable situation, the irony of it. On the one hand, he's coming to kill me, but in the end, he's at my mercy. He doesn't realize that. Nothing helps a person, not 3,000 soldiers outside, nothing helps a person but the koyach of tefillah. And that's the basis behind this payment. David realized nothing helped. The Pasuk says, the Medrash says on this Pasuk, Migdal Oiz, Shem Hashem, Bo Yolutz Tzadik B'Nisko. Tefillah is a tower of strength. Migdal Oiz, Shem Hashem. Bo Yolutz Tzadikim run to it, and they are lifted and brought up. I would suggest that all the Talmidim of Rav Shlomo, who davened in his minyan, became a tower of strength in their tefillah. Through the Roymon of Tefillah, which was tremendously miswaying the tefillah. We used to travel from Golders Green to Stamford Hill, a 40-minute drive every morning to daven with him in his home. The Roymon of Tefillah was phenomenal atmosphere of tefillah. We became a tower of strength from the davening of Rav Shlomo. And that was the point. Nothing helps a person more than tefillah. From the koyach of his tefillah, he lifted us up to a tremendous dalga of kedusha. Many times he used to bring down the Lashon of the Nefesh HaChaim, but Chatzko used to say, the Nefesh HaChaim, hey, Tufa, lifts up a person. Koyach is lift you up, make you into something unique. I think that's what the great success of Rav Shlomo was. He made us into towers of strength. Only the Talmidim, their koyach of tefillah, is phenomenal koyach of tefillah, which they have. And that's the lesson. Based on this paywork, I would like to say that's really the limit. I'd like to bring out certain limudim of tefillah, which maybe come out of this pasuk, and add certain points which I learned from Rav Shlomo at different times in tefillah. Let's look at different psukim. We say this pasuk all the time. In reality, it's talking about our times. This is the mood of Klal Yisrael at the moment. Says the pasuk. Koili el Hashem ezok, koili el Hashem eschanon. How would you describe that pasuk in tefillah? I would say it's bullseye. He hit target. Koili el Hashem ezok. Right to the koili el Hashem. No distraction, no diversion. Straight to the point. Ezok. Koili Hashem eschanon. The Maharitz in his Perush on Tefillah, in Tehillim, says as follows: Lashon ezok is a taina in din. Lashon eschanon is matnas chinan. Koyach of Tefillah is the oker. David had a taina in din. He's coming to pursue me. I never wanted to kill him. I have a taina in din. I'm the nirda. I could get and kill him. A zoka is in din. Eschanon is in matnas chinan, meaning be favorable with me. Matnas chayim. Well, there you learn. Torah has to be directly and pointed. I remember Shlomo used to bring out very often the Lashon in Tzadik Ches, Mishnah Bura. V'yosim el libay. In Tzadik Ches, right at the bottom there, thinking Sif Dalet, he brings down. When a person davens with Kavanah, v'yos she'en yad shum malach v'nivra v'koicha l'malas she'losa ki im d'l'soyim spar. He used to bring that pasuk up. When a person davens, nothing helps. No protectia, no rich Uncle Charlie, no person help. Nothing else will help you. But directly to the point. Yossi Melech, the person put in his heart when he davens, nothing else is important. A person has different connections to discard any other connection which a person has. Creative Tefillah is direct, El Hashem, directly to the point. Perhaps there are two expressions of Tefillah, Rabbi Yisrael, here which we're talking about. There's something called a Sicha, and there's something called a Haggadah. I will explain, I will pour out my conversation. So the Malvin explains on this passage the following. The mitzvah on Leil HaSeder is called Mitzvah Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. The sefer we use is called a Haggadah. The difference is enormous. A Sipur is an old story. If you sit down with the Kindle on Leil HaSeder and tell them the story, they'll fall asleep in 5 minutes. They know the story. And you would say, Lahagid l'cha mashu. Lahagid means current, something which is happening to me now. Meaning, the conversation of Tefillah has to be, what is going on in my home now? What is happening on my table? What is happening in my kitchen? Shlomo always used to say, at the end of Shemona Yosef, say what is on your mind. Speak it out. Say out what you're thinking. And therefore, Lahagid, and he would say, Lahagid l'cha mashu. It's not a sipur, it's a Haggadah. Magid Halakim. That's the Rosh why we say, Hashemayim Mesakim Kvel, Hashemayim has been Masa Yodov Magid Halakim. What here is today's weather, what's on my mind now. Therefore, the Koyach of Tefillah is to express what's on your mind now. You know the part that I'm in a pach. Klal Yisrael at the moment is in a situation at a dead end. A pach is a dead end. I don't know. Perhaps there's an allusion here in this pasuk to Perik Kuf Kaf Dalet. If you remember, the Arizal means that. The Chaim Vital brought down the name of the Arizal. Perik Kuf Kaf Dalet is talking about Klal Yisrael in our times. Lulei Hashem Shohei Alanu B'kum Aleinu Odom. Who's the Odom? The Odom is the Terah Odom, Yishmael. As I Chaim V'Galunu B'Achrei Sapon Bonu. They're so furious with us, they can swallow us alive. The fury of Yishmael. As I Maim Shutaf and Nachalav Anashem. Previous scholars in Klal Yisrael is like Maim Shutaf Unu, is torrential water. But this one is not, as I have Hashem, Maim Aseidonim is Yishmael is furious. Why are they furious, says the Arizal? Because of what happened to Hagar. She was sent away. She was the real child. This was the real child. Yishmael was the child of Avraham Avinu. Baruch Hashem Shalonas on the Teref L'Shinehem. We will never be completely eaten up alive. They want to swallow us up alive. Look at the next passage, Rabbi Yisrael. Nafshele Ketzipa Nimnota Mipach Hayodshin. The hunter's trap. The hunter's trap means the trap of Yishmael. Hapach Nishba, which you know the trap will snap. Then and we will be saved. I wonder if that's what the reference here is referring to here. Tomlu Pachli. I'm in a pach. Klal Yisrael is in a pach at the moment. The matzah, outside is the matzah, inside Israel. There's like a dead end here. The pasuk ends with the followers. Etzreinu b'shem Hashem, which Shlomo always used to mention. B'shem Hashem is Koyach HaTefillah. Or he says Shemayim Bo, it says Chukah Shemayim Bo, it says Torah. The Koyach of Yeshua Christ comes to the Koyach of Tefillah and the Koyach of Torah. Let's go back to the pasuk. The day again. Habeit Yominu Ei ve'eini makin. Avad Manoisim and Ein Doresh L'Nafshi. The matzah of Klal Yisrael is completely alone. Alone, mitboded, without any support at all. Zorakti Elecha Hashem, Omarti Ato Amatzi. I called out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Chelki Be'eretz HaChaim. I remember Rav Shlomo used to say very often, Koyach HaTefillah is a zo'oka. The zo'oka means ato. Ato means directly to you alone. He used to bring down from the Chaim. Chaim Brisker used to say, you don't daven off a meglichkeit, you daven off a zicha. Not with a possibility, with a probability, a definite, a zicha. Atom machzi, miloshen chus. Chus v'rachim olein, atom. You are the one who can save you, nothing else. Meaning, the desperation is when you turn to Ba'er Olam, there is nothing else. There's no other Yeshua. Don't turn to Mr. Trump, don't turn to the IDF, don't turn to any other forces. The force is only the Koyach of Tefillah and the Koyach of Torah in itself. Let me just share with you a Maisa, which I heard my wife told me just recently. That was an Adweik who was filling up his bags at the Makolet, and he had about a whole wagon full of food which he was buying there. And as he came to the counter to check out, the man behind him was a Chiloni. He turned around and said, whatever it costs you, I'm paying for you. He said, no, I have money. He said, no, I'm paying for everything you have. He was a Chiloni. He said, I've got money. He said, no, I'm paying for everything. Eventually he insisted and he paid for all his goods. As they went out to the Makolet, so he turned around and said, what's this, my hand? He said, I'll tell you why. I am the person who invented the iron barzel, what's it called? The Iron Dome. Iron Dome. I invented the Iron Dome, and I tell you, it became an incredible success story for Eretz Yisrael. We sold it to all nations of the world. But you should know something. In Eretz Yisrael, it succeeds about 95% of the time. Any countries where we send it out, it's about 40-50% of it. It never works in other countries. It's the same machine, it doesn't work. And the reason is because of people like you, because you are learning Torah. Here's such a thing, unbelievable admission here. I invented it and I know it works. It's perfect, but it doesn't work. Why does it work elsewhere? Because the koyach of tefillah and Torah of you people like you, that's the koyach here. And that's what it means here. The enormous koyach of Torah. Maxi means chus. Chus means a connection. I'm mishpacha to you. I'm related to you. Hakshiva rinosi ki daloisi ma'od hatzileni mi'od v'ke'omsu mimeni. Daloisi ma'od. Rav Shalom used to bring down very often a lashon Rashi at the beginning. The whole koyach of Ezras is you're knocking on the door. Knocking on the door, you're hoping to open the door and come. That's why we have so many gula tefillah. The connection of gula tefillah is that you're knocking on the, immediately must start, you Shemaines. You don't start Shemaines straight away, then it's lost. He's waiting for you opening the door. I'm in a straitjacket. You will be kind, you will look after me in the end. What's the Lashon ki sigma? You will pay me back. What does it mean you will pay me back? Pay me back for my investment, for my Mesiras Nefesh and Torah. You will pay me back. What does it mean pay me back? For all the efforts and Mesiras Nefesh I put into Torah, you will reward me for that. That's the greatest behind it. I want to share with you a halacha which made a tremendous impression on me from Rav Shlomo, which was a beautiful lesson, the koyach of Torah and the koyach of mitzvahs, which I felt it played me tremendous chizuk. Remember on the Talis we say the following words. Don't ever think you can work out the Shoah. You can never work things out. My plan is entirely, my thoughts are entirely different from your thoughts. As high as it is from heaven to earth, so are my ways far beyond your ways. You can never work out that Yerushalayim. But this you can, yes, work out. When the rain and the snow falls, it doesn't go back. You can, yes, work that out. The need for rain and snow. Ask Rav Shlomo. Kasha, it's in Ruach Chaim, Perek Beis, Mishnah Yud Beis. What does the Navi mean? It's V'shomer lo yoshev. Whoever thought it does go back? Whoever thought of course the rain and the snow doesn't go back. Rain and snow come, it doesn't mean condensation. The rain and snow comes down, it doesn't go back. Says Rav Chaim, you should know something. The rain and the snow do not go back. But the Torah and the mitzvahs, yes, goes back. And that is the real cycle of economic prosperity. You send Ruchnius and he sends back. V'shomer lo yoshev, the rain and snow, but you know what does go back? The Ruchnius goes back. And that causes a tremendous galgal of success and prosperity and welfare and gladness. You send Ruchnius and he sends Gashmius. That's the credit behind it. He bought a Zagaya, Rabbi Yisai. Very, very strange Gemara in Baba Basra. Really very difficult Gemara. But one of the things I would follow in my life. I can't explain the Gemara, but you can certainly say something out of it. Rebbe Posach Oitzes B'Shneimah, that Baba Basra, that first. Rebbe opened up his storehouses, he was extremely wealthy. He had wheat and grain to give out in family. Omar, you consul Bali Mikvah, let Bali Mikvah come in. Bali Mishnah, people who learn Mishnah, Bali Gemara, Bali Halacha, Bali Halacha. My rule is, my principle is, I don't give any of my food, any of my provisions, any of my stores, I don't give anything to people who are Amaratzi. Dochak Rav Yonasan ben Amnon. Rebbe had a Talmud called Rav Yonasan ben Amnon. He was a certain Talmud who refused to take anything for his learning. He didn't take anything. B'nichnas, Omar loy, Rebbe Panasein, please feed me. I have nothing to eat for my family. He couldn't recognize him. He was disguised. Omar loy, B'ni Karisa, do you learn Chumash? Omar loy, I don't know. Shanisa, Mishnah, no. Omar loy, I'm following my rules. I don't give to anybody who doesn't learn Mishnah. Omar loy, Panasein, Kekele. So feed me like a dog. Or an oile. He doesn't, a few crumbs, give me a few crumbs. Pound say, Rebbe gave to this Talmud. Was at the Nofak, after he went out, Yosef Rebbe sat down and cried his eyes out. Omar le oili shonosati pitilam is oive. In the end, I gave for my provisions to an Amor Oretz, and he was broken. Omar le phone of Reb Shimon, the son of Rebbe, was standing next to him, and he said to him, he found out what's going on. My father is so upset. How come who was this person? He discovered this was Yonasan ben Amnon, the Talmud who refused to take anything from him. And he told his father, you know something, this is the one who the Talmud She'elach HaWetzah Anas Mikavad, he doesn't want to take anything from the Torah. Vodku v'ashkach, and he was in Omar Rebbe. If that's the case, you consul, and anybody come in again. You can't take that risk. If Talmidei Chacham are dressing up, they're not taking anything for their money, for their food, what kind of man manage it? The kasha is as follows. A man comes along, his family is starving, it's time of famine. Why didn't he give anything to him at all? Rebbe L'Shitosa says the Gemara, Ein puranas bo ela bishvil ameoretz. They never give anything back. The cycle stops. There's never anything in that cycle. Then there's nothing which goes back. They are the ones who cause the famine. That's the reason behind it. So Shlomo is a beautiful lie here. The Gemara is very schwer. But the taich is that when a person sends something up in Ruchnis, he brings down tremendous shefa in Gashmias. And that's the raya for the Shana Yosh, which is behind it. Rabbi said, we are going through a period of the Yipus of the Mashiach in our times. Rav Pinkas, brings down the Psicha V'Sefer Shoyim B'Tfilah, a startling comment of Rav Chaim Vital. Chaim Vital says, in the times of the Yipus of the Mashiach, the most important mitzvah is Tfilah, more than Talmud Torah. Ask Rav Chaim Vital, how can that possibly be? Talmud Torah can make it kulam. What do you mean it's the most important mitzvah? The most important avodah is Torah Chachatu. Says Rav Chaim Vital, but Pinkas explains it. We'll see it in the Psicha. I think it's page Ches and page Tes in Sharit. He explains as follows. It means like this. Supposing a person on Rosh Hashanah sits down and learns a Daf Gemara and does not listen to Shofar, the Ma'aseh Talmud Torah can make it kulam. It's more valuable and more precious than Kriyat Shofar. Oh, but he missed the point. The point is at this particular moment in time, the relevant mitzvah is, of course, Talmud Torah is connected. If you don't blow shofar, then you're missing it. Leila say the person sits and learns Torah, doesn't eat matzah, doesn't say. You're missing the point. You're off the point. You're irrelevant. You're not on the mark. You're not on the mark. The answer is as follows. When it comes to Ikaz of the Mashiach, the koyach is a koyach of tefillah, which turns everything around. That's the koyach of tefillah. What does it mean like this? It means that there is in tefillah something called a catalyst. A catalyst means it causes a whole change. The circumstances of the world that we see as follows. It's like human hegemony, the pride, the money, the prestige, the power, the secular world which is all behind us all. The koyach of tefillah is to change that, and that's a massive change in the world. The world will move over from a world of Gashmias to a world completely of Ruchnias. Let me read out to you Psukim, which we find in it's a pasuk in Yeshaya. Pasuk in Yeshaya. The time before the Mashiach will come, that the water covers the earth in the following terms. Until the times of Mashiach, everything above the surface is money and secular and all the standards of Goyim. Underneath the surface, which you don't see, is the whole koyach of Ruchnis, which is under the surface. Everything is covered with the water of money, secular. What will happen in the end, it will all turn around. How will it turn around? The only catalyst that we know of is the koyach of tefillah causes a complete change, changes the circumstances. Torah b'vadai has a tremendous koyach, but the koyach of tefillah, as we know, says the Gemara, Lama nimshulu tfilosin shel tzadikim la'atar. Why is the tefillah of tzadikim compared to a pitchfork? Says the Gemara, the farmer goes down into the field, the Kohen sukkah that tesla. He sees that the wheat on top is dry, the wheat underneath is wet. What he does, he takes a pitchfork and flips it over. He takes an ein tofresh, he takes it and turns over the situation. That's the Lashon by Yitzchak. Never ever could this lady ever have a child. Next passage, he just told me she could never have a child. It turns over a situation. That's an incredible prayer. And that's what's needed in the time of Ikzat Mashiach. You're right, Talmud Torah can make it good. But there's something at this time which is so relevant to make a change in the situation. Isn't that what happened exactly by Eliezer? No? He stood there even when he had a star in his pocket with all the money in the world. He turned around and said, how can to change around the situation. And that is what is needed in the times of Ikzat Mashiach. To make a change, cause a catalyst. And that's the prayer which is behind it. That's the meaning behind the Chaim Vital. That's what we see behind it. The prayer of tefillah is a different prayer from our time at the moment. You're right, Talmud Torah can make you know this. By Isaac b'nei Yisrael, may I name Vital also. You can Isaac to Esther as well. By Yehudim the Hashmid Al Gulad Yisraelim, Sumu Alai, the whole thing turned around. By Yehudim Ha'Yisrael, the Simcha, the Sosin, turned around. The prayer of tefillah is an enormous prayer for a catalyst. It's a pitchfork and causes an enormous change. I'd like to end, Rabbi Yisrael. Last week, the Yartzheit, today is the Yartzheit of Shlomo, but his partner very much in many different sikhs was with Matis Yoel, a Maimah which I remember hearing when I was in Lakewood from Matis Yoel, he said as follows. Mishnah says, al HaTorah, al Avodah, al Minas Chasodim. Rabbeinu Yonah says on that Mishnah as follows: not al Shosh U'Bodlam Kayim, ha'emes v'adim v'asholem. The word is made on Torah, Avodah, Minas Chasodim. Says Rabbeinu Yonah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu anticipates our shleimus in these three areas. He anticipates that we will excel in these three areas. Matisyahu then said at the Siyam Hashas in 2012 as follows. He explained as follows: what does it mean? It means as follows, that what we have to do is mashlim our avodah in these three areas. So Matisyahu, I would suggest that in Torah there's been a renaissance. Everything has changed. People are learning Daf Yomi, people are interested in Torah. You can go anywhere in the world. I once went to Denver and I had to catch an early morning flight. I went to the shul at 5:30 in the morning. There was no seat in the shul. I was in Baltimore once. The same thing happened. No seat in the Heinemann shul. People are learning Torah. There's been a renaissance in Torah. So I said about Matisyahu. Chesed is major league projects in most people. Hafnos Asolachim, Kala, Sameis, singles, crisis, children. There's a tremendous chesed in Kala. Then Matisyahu said as follows, which is Nakuda we're bringing out. And in Lo Yodea B'Kesher Tefillah, this has been a renaissance in Tefillah. I don't know if there's been such a change. Meaning people just say the words, and what he said is something like the Einei Ha'eda. What he saw is something that we don't see. He saw the change in Torah, he saw the change in Chesed, but Tefillah doesn't. Tefillah is the catalyst according to Rav Chaim. That will cause the change. That's the lashon of Belchana. Maskil David, the koach of Tefillah, b'yosef Tefillah is the koach which will cause the change. That's what he said. And therefore, in order to get back to get back to the korbanos, we need to make a hashlama in Tefillah. He said, I don't know if there's been that change. And I don't know if there is. Perhaps Rabbi say on the yacht side of Agon, of Shlomo Zechat Zadik Yivocha, we can mechazik more in Tefillah, take it slowly. I remember I used to daven for years in the minyan of Zuckerman in Givat Shol, and push a minyan, Zechat Zadik Yivocha. I always find that minyan had tremendous hamtona. Not length, but delay. Enough time to say the words properly, to daven the words and think about what you're saying. Not to be ma'arich, it's too long. But to say something with meaning, something with hamtona, with delay, something like. If you can do that, then you can achieve tremendous things. It's not necessarily dependent on time. Not dependent on time. Beautiful Gemara in Bochus, Daf Lamed Beis, Rabbi Eliezer davened with his yeshiva every day. And it says the Gemara, one day, one Bocher went down to be the Chazan, he was supersonic, he flew through the davening. He said, Rebbe, they came and came. How can anybody daven with such a Chazan? He's far too fast. Evidently, Rebbe Eliezer turned around and said, you mean the davening took as long as it takes to say, Keil no, before no, lo? He said, how long? No, it's longer. He said, what are you complaining about? Shuv Maisa, says the Gemara there, Daf the base in Bochers. The Bocher went down, he was like a tortoise. He was like a snail, he dragged out the davening terribly. They came and said, Rebbe, how can you daven with such a chasm? It's not too long. He said, Rebbe Eliezer didn't take Aboim Loyla? No. He must have a wonderful sense of humor. In other words, as far as once Moshe Rabbeinu said 5 words, once he took 40 days to say something. It's not the Ikka. The Ikka is not the time. The Ikka is the focus. Sometimes you can say 5 words is enough. Sometimes 40 days is what you need. It's not that. It's the focus, the hamtona, the delay of thinking what you're saying. You can say that down in such a way. Only a maskil at such a way. Yidain Yit Koinein should think of it and prepare himself. Ulayira b'hachonos halbe, said Rabbi Chana, with tremendous preparation. Ulayira b'hachonos, that is the way. A maskil adovi b'yosef amot tefillah, the koyach of tefillah, the koyach directly to the bullseye, straight to the point. Sichosi, hagil, I tell you my conversation at the moment. I'm in a path at the moment, but in the end he'll pay me back. He's sigmon alive. Nizka liro es yom l'koyach b'Yisrael. Amen.